I'm going to go over just the social media landscape, and you guys are all experts, and I'm just going to run through all of that, looking at what metrics matter and why, and how other like tourism boards, like top performing tourism boards that I kind of base off of Skift IQ and some of the case studies there, and what's next that you should look out for in 2015. So here's the breakdown of what the networks look like. And what's really interesting is that most of these networks are really US-based, but now the audience is, for all of them, all 4 of them, they're over 50% international audiences. And I think that's wonderful because you can now reach out. Granted, like, yeah, they want, social media wants you to pay for ads and whatnot, but there is that opportunity, and I want you guys to think that that's an opportunity. So you just have to figure out how to spend this money wisely. And the other thing is, as you already know, like Instagram has just been growing exponentially in terms of users. Like the creatives on there are getting a lot more, producing a lot more quality work, which is really amazing and very inspiring to see from a reporting standpoint, because there's great stories to write. So, and that is all due to what you guys accomplish in your respective teams. So thanks for that. So I wanted to talk about the benchmarks, and I don't want to scare you guys with what I actually look at behind the scenes and how I qualify stories on social, but I look at quality of acquisitions and also engagement. So for quality of acquisitions, it's really more about how active are your overall followers on each of these respective platforms. Because it doesn't matter how many followers you have, it's like, what are they doing on your platforms? So that gets into engagement. But what kind of engagement are you seeing? Are you really tracking this type of engagement? And being that some of the teams are kind of like small, I understand, because I also worked on the social side and being on the producing content and doing community management, and it's a lot of work. So it's really important to see that likes, favorites, and views they're a little bit lesser in engagement value than comments, shares, or retweets. And like 2-3 years ago, comments were so random that you could count them as like 1 if you were going to weight this out. But shares or retweets are definitely still the most like important type of like engagement on social. And then next, I take a look at how effective the content is, because you're working so hard to get the most beautiful image, write the best copy, the most wittiest line, and come up with great hashtags. But if you don't get the right engagement or you produce too much, then you actually just wasted your time. So, so that's really important to be mindful of, so that you could actually scale effectively and be more, just be more cognizant of your resources. And then the total followers and unique followers to interact, I call that community quality. And again, being that there's so much in competition here for content being seen on social, it really is important to kind of look at what you already have and optimize there, and not try to be too innovative, because you got to work with existing things that you could effectively make better. And lastly, when you do campaigns, amplification results, you really have to look at 200% over your average, whatever your metric is doing over that course of time. So I want to get into the next slide and commend you guys for all the work that you've been doing. And that is, in terms of acquisitions, you guys are actually best hotel brands. So big applause to you guys for that. It's amazing to know that for destinations, like you're competing with large hotel brands as a sector. So, and as you can tell here on this, on these slides, it's, can you guys see it, actually? Is it Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter? Okay. As you know, like in the travel industry, like airlines are just way ahead of the game on social, and that is because they have such a huge marketing budget. And also they've just amassed, once you have the momentum going, it just keeps rising. And with media, of course, media, that's all they do is produce content. So that's where where these numbers are coming from. And I feel like knowing that's like the actual case or like where we are today, that shouldn't scare you, because this other side of things is actually, I feel like you need to look at your own destinations and see how you pair with other destinations, but have a good starting point. So can you guys see this chart too, or is it hard to see? I'm afraid I can't okay. In terms of where you are, you can't compare yourself with a huge tourism board like Tourism Australia or Tourism and Events Queensland, rather. And I think you really need to see where you are in terms of your maturity level on social, because if you're going to pair yourself with those, you're not going to come up with the right benchmarks. You're going to feel like your efforts on social aren't doing that great, but they might be. So I've devised this type of benchmark looking at the top 10 brands on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, and this is what I come up with. So the advanced level for social media, this is like an average, like the page likes are over 1.5. For the mid maturity level, which I call integrated, it is under 1 million, and for consistent, I feel that that's around around 350,000 followers. And that sounds really high, but with knowing that knowing that it is high, you're actually looking at more of the percentage. So you can apply these metrics to where you are. Like for Facebook community quality, which I mentioned was your overall Facebook followers over your how many active users you have, like unique users. You can look at these percentages. And yes, I do actually use this when I write my stories. And then for Twitter followers, it's how many followers you have per day, and how that's growing over time. So we could talk more about this in detail. If you have any specific questions for me, I'd love to answer them. But I'm trying to get to a point where not everyone's equal, and we know that. So we should start making adjustments so that it actually makes sense for how big our team is, so that we can actually start moving up the ladder in terms of reaching realistic goals. So, and why do I say that? Is because this is what the competitive landscape is for social media. I mean, we're looking at huge brands, worldwide brands, that are spending tons of money to get recognized on social. So with this, I feel like there's still time and energy and many opportunities to innovate. And this is, for me, this is what I'm seeing on social, is that reach doesn't really matter as much because it's not actual engagement. And your reach is going to grow based on the engagement that you have. So why not concentrate on your existing community and really getting the most out of them by being present and talking to them. A lot of social media for me is really on the community management side and looking at content and taking out, okay, well, if this content doesn't do well, why didn't it do well? And is it because like the content sucked? No, it's because probably you didn't like say anything after like someone said some awesome comment about it. So with that, I wanted to go over a few of the case studies that I've looked at in the past few months. Visit California did a really awesome campaign talking about individuals within their city that have made an impact, but also positioned it in a way where it was more aspirational, and also they positioned them as like, I could be that person, or I know that person, or it's kind of a next door neighbor kind of thing. And I think they did really well. Like this YouTube project was on their YouTube as their own kind of separate tab. And then they also had the same tab or the same layout on their Visit California page, which is like, they also put in some timing aspect to this, which is Dream 365, like it's year-round. So that means you're expecting there's gonna be year-round content. And then the YouTube takeover for 24 hours is really great, because then you actually are saying, hey, for 24 hours, we have a captive audience. What can we do within that 24 hours to really like deepen our brand messaging and also to continue the conversation? So they've worked with Bob Burnquist. He's a great skateboarder. And yes, this is high quality, high production, but you could definitely still take inspiration from this. And that shouldn't deter you from like exploring new ways to communicating what's so awesome about your destination. Music's huge. Like, I love music, and connecting with someone through that emotion is really effective. So there's a lot of like cultural research that you guys need to do to help bring these storytellers out and keep it engaging and authentic. And in terms of results and conversions, you can see there how far they've been able to increase the interest in their state. So Discover Los Angeles, what I really liked about their campaign on Twitter is that they had these multiple hashtags. The branded hashtags are really interesting in that, again, it's time-based, and there has a nice ring to it, LA story. And then Car Free LA, which you all know that's what people want. That's the model they would want for their city, but it's not happening, so it's kind of a polarized and also like a great conversation piece on Twitter. And the Red Carpet LA that's for their the Oscars every year that they host in the city. So what they do, knowing that that's a conversation, they actually start the conversation. They ask a question on Twitter. And then with that, you get more of an engagement there. And although there's only one tweet here that they've responded to, what they also have is a link to the hard work they've been doing online with the blog. So that's really helpful. Like, for example, like I actually tweeted at Nashville before I came here and tried to figure out, oh, what should I do? And it was really great. The response times was awesome. And I got a few ideas on where I should go. And it brought me to the blog, and I could read more there. So it brings website visits, and sometimes I feel Twitter is underutilized because it's not as visual, and that's the reality of it. Even though you put photos on there, people on Twitter like to read. So give them something good to read and follow through with that. Visit Philly. This is one of the campaigns that I really enjoyed looking at on Facebook. it really talked about it's because they're tasked with 4 counties, and it brought their urban audience kind of talked about more of the awareness of the surrounding destinations, and they also created trails in the surrounding areas. So with the research that they did, they actually created the app so that it's a quiz, and you kind of find out what's interesting about yourself if you are the user. And then it tells you, oh, okay, well, here's a list of like suggested places. So they actually got a pretty good turnout for this Facebook app, because it's 14% of their active audience. So that was just, I highly commend them for that. The next slide is Pure Michigan. And again, like focusing on quality. This one of these posts, the one on the left is it's a contest, but it asked its audience to comment on this beautiful fall very nature-oriented photograph, and said, caption this. And they had so many comments come through, and they're qualified comments. And I really am very impressed by those types of comments, because again, like moving in from like 2 or 3 years ago, the comments were so random, and now they're more fluid, and they give you a little bit more sense of who is your audience. And I think that's really helpful for further learning, and also would add value to how you're going to quantify your ROI later on. Because they'll tell you, oh yeah, I just visited, or I'm thinking about visiting. So those are the type of conversations you want to see on social. And on Instagram, I feel like it's happening a lot more quicker than Facebook for some reason, but this is how Pure Michigan is doing it right now, and they're incentivizing their audience through contests. And their contest prizes aren't really anything impressive, but the fact that, you know, when I talked to Chad about his strategy on this, Pure Michigan, on this post in particular, he said it was really more about they wanted to show that they actually cared about their community and show some sort of appreciation, even though it's just a small prize. So next, let's go. For Tourism and Events Queensland, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Ultimate Instameet. And this was massive on a scale because it's the 10th year for the Instameet. And they actually blew past using the word Instameet for that weekend. And they were able to mobilize 13 regions from their state, which I find highly, highly impressive, using imagery and using Instagram. And the way they've talked to influencers and local mavens, I think was, not talked to them, but chose them. It wasn't based on how many followers they had. It was really with their love for and their curiosity about the region that made it really interesting. So in terms of contributions, they got 16,500 for just that weekend, and I've kind of looked at the top 5 of the hashtags that were related to each region and how well they did. So 21% was from the Visit Sunshine Coast, and these are great metrics because they can be found, and they're all underlying more of a country strategy with Tourism Australia, because they use hashtag See Australia as well. And granted, yes, Queensland is beautiful. They have one of the best beaches in the world, and it's just stunning photography all around. You just can't go wrong with taking you can't take a bad photo. So you can utilize social media to further explore different destinations, kind of secret destinations within your own territories. And lastly, I wanted to talk about Tourism Australia. This is their recent campaign, and they just had Invite the World to Dinner that just happened on Friday. They've been working on this since May of this year. Well, they launched it in May, and theirs was a highly integrated campaign that really focused on the Twitter and Instagram for social. That is and they invited a ton of people a ton of influencers to come and join them and explore Australia, and juxtaposing wine with the landscape is just interesting to see that as part of a campaign. It was very consistent going through each month of their social media feed. It was just really impressive. So what do you do with all these contributions and hashtags? How do you say, okay, did that work? Was that something that we could use, or what's the purpose of having all these hashtags and all these numbers? And again, it's about discovery. So we're in a state now where people want to look for things, but you have to help them and make it easier for them to find these things. So be strategic with your hashtags. Don't be afraid to use more than 3 hashtags if you have to, but stay consistent. And food for them, according to the data, was really something that was incredibly compelling. For people who haven't visited Australia, Australia actually is ranked 10th. But after they visited Australia, they rank right behind Italy, 3rd, and the 1st is France. So for them, that's a very compelling case study to go into a marketing campaign like this to focus on Australia's bounty. So, and again, going back to my experience on the plane, food is a huge connector, and I don't know what it is, but it's a really easy conversation to have, and people love certain foods or hate it, and it's a great conversation piece online and offline. So in terms of what I'm seeing as the social media uptrends, I see that a lot on Instagram now. A lot of users mention their friends to take a look at your content, but the challenge is that Instagram hasn't given us a way to actually measure that just yet. So it's been really difficult, even when I talk to some of these other destinations. Hey, so how's the app mentioning going? And they're like, it's great. And I'm like, okay, well, give me a few facts, or give me some figures, and they can't give it to me. And then the next question I have is, but what are they saying? And they communicated to me, oh, well, they are looking forward to visiting. Or they mentioned a friend, and they said that they want to go with them, and they start actually planning trips. So in terms of relating it back to social ROI, this is why I'm mentioning you have to look at the actual interactions and being present. And community management's huge. So if you're a community manager, hats off to you, because it's a huge job. And then users on Facebook, I know you guys are probably seeing this, is they're commenting with photos. And it's really interesting, they don't even say anything. They just say comment with their photos. Why are they commenting on their photos? I think it's more about that they're actually relating, and they're trying to increase their social capital with saying, hey, I was there. It's the same thing as graffiti, I was here. Now they're doing that with images. I was there, I was at that destination. Targeting efforts. As you know, with Facebook's pay to play, Twitter ads and the cards, Instagram now has the sponsored content, and actually tourism, Turkey tourism is on there. I just saw their sponsored post this past weekend, and they sent us a press release on Tuesday. And so I don't know if you've talked about some of these ads that you're getting served on Facebook from your friends, but I think they're, for me, because I'm active on social and online, I'm actually getting served good content and actually start shopping. Like, I feel like Facebook's like my personal shopper. And why? Is because the targeting, you're targeting by interest now. And I think that's a really powerful medium, but they make it really sound simple, but it's a lot more complicated because it relates to how well you know your audience. And lastly, okay, so yeah, destinations, the contests on Twitter and Instagram, they can be mismanaged. Again, it's, you know, how many contests can you have in a year? Or can you just focus on one contest? And all the lead up to that, and the follow-up at the end, and creating the content all throughout that campaign. It's a huge challenge, but I'm seeing more brands do that on Twitter, Instagram, and not on Facebook as much. Facebook, they rely on more of the apps because the graph search is not as, if you use graph search to find anything, it's not as, you just can't find as your hashtag content like on Twitter and Instagram. And it's really hard to measure as well. And again, content discovery with the hashtags. Hashtags, you know, between like branded hashtags, manufactured hashtags, and also the general hashtags. So with that, naming your hashtags is going to be even more important because there's so much more content out there. So having a balance and knowing what the velocity is for using a hashtag and how it's going to be discovered is highly important, and it's going to be really be more competitive in 2015.
Thank you very much, Joyce.
Thanks.
Round of applause.
Thanks, guys.